Welcome. In front of me is a Google Pixel 6a, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. So to get started, let's just pop it open. Now I'll mention, or I'll actually admit, I am actually a little bit excited about this. This is basically like a mid-range device in terms of a price, and I already listened to some overviews of this, some reviews, and I know the specs of it, so it is an exciting device, at least in my opinion. Now, one thing that I'll mention that I kind of like is these pull tabs. Now, if you open up plenty of boxes, you will realize that these are just fantastic. They're basically a copy of what Apple does, but still, having that anywhere is just super nice. You don't have to get a knife to basically cut those, just pull it off and that's it. Right off the bat, you can see the phone. I wish I had the Pixel 6 to actually compare it to, just so you could see the differences in it, but in terms of appearance-wise, it's very similar to what you would, to how the actual Pixel looks like. And inside of the box, we got just a cable for charging. It's a Type-C to Type-C. Then we got a USB-C to Type-A. And some paperwork along with the SIM eject tool. So let's move over to the phone. Power it on. Come on. And there we go. So while it's booting up, I'm going to quickly go over the screen right here, which will be probably one of the least exciting things about this phone. So just gonna rip the band-aid right off the bat. So it's an OLED display, 6.1 inch, and it has 83% screen to body ratio with 429 pixels per inch. Gorilla Glass 3. And that's basically it. Now, if you're wondering, no, there is no high refresh rate. It's just 60 Hertz. So like I said, this is probably the least exciting part of it. Now, one thing that I'll mention right off the bat that I feel right now once the device booted up, haptic feedback, so good. If you ever used Pixel before, when you go to the setup, you have this bouncing little thingy thing. When it hits, like when it bounces back, it gives you a haptic feedback, so you can get to feel the motor in here, and it feels really nice. Anyway, so like I said, display is here probably the least exciting part of it. Now, outside of that, we do have a not typical internals, I guess I can say. So instead of like Snapdragon, we get the Google Tensor chip right here. And I'm not exactly sure how it compares to other equivalents or other processors on the market. So that's something that I would recommend checking out on your own, some kind of benchmarks, and see how it performs. But just at a glance, it does feel like it's snappy, so it is as you would expect from a phone that costs about $400 to $500. So let's flip over the device and get a look at the back. So probably you will now see a little bit of a difference. So the default, the non-A version of this phone had a better camera setup at the back, but also the bump of the camera setup on the other phones, the other Pixels, was a little bit bigger. So here they managed to lower it down. Oh, that kind of blinded me. So yeah, they managed to reduce the actual camera bump, but the cameras that you have right here are the old ones. So they're basically a dual 12 megapixel sensors, 12 wide and 12 ultra wide, and that's basically it. It's the same sensors that you used to have on the old Pixels. Now, because of that, that might be a bummer for some people, but also consider the fact that Google had a decent amount of time to basically tune these cameras to work just fantastically. They might not be the best cameras, but if you were a fan of the image processing of Google before, and it's basically the same thing as you would already expect, just with a little bit of a cheaper setup, I could say. And I'm gonna just capture a couple trash photos right here of my own. I'm not a photographer, so don't expect some outstanding results from me. But yeah, let's just pop a couple photos. There we go, just some dumb little photos that I took right here. I'm gonna max out the brightness just so it's a little bit better to see. So here's my keyboard. Now, to be honest, in terms of actual like sharpness of the image, I cannot complain. It's fairly sharp even when zoomed in. Obviously it starts graining out when you get closer. You can see that it is lacking in just resolution, but still it's a really decent photo anyway in terms of sharpness and color. Now here we got something that just is a little bit brighter than what I see. This photo didn't really come out all that great. The background right here is way brighter than it actually is in reality for me, and the plant itself in actual like scenario is a little bit darker, so it did brighten up the photo a little bit too much in my opinion. But because of that, objectively the photo is much clearer to see, and there's still enough detail and it looks okay. You can obviously tune it up, lower the brightness, exposure and stuff like that in here if you want to match it more to what it actually should look like. And here's another photo. Again, same as before, it is a little bit brighter than it should be, and this photo didn't actually come out all that great. It looks like it's over processed, I think. It just looks weird. Just kind of bring that out. As you can see, it's kind of weird, not very comparable. So the fake plant right here is probably the least like appealing part of the photo, which was basically the main part of the photo, sadly. But other than that, you can see exposure at the back is actually much closer to what it should be, so everything is looking fairly nice. Anyway, so the camera, as you would expect, it's just a which you already used to have from Google Pixels. Now, one thing that just dawned on me is using the old cameras, it has a 60 Hz display. So what I'm kind of wondering, what would be the purpose of upgrading it from like a older Pixel? Because at this point you're not getting really much in terms of like differences to justify the switch to a new phone. Now, mind you, this is the more budget-oriented version of it, so if you were already like on outdated Pixel, then this would be a great upgrade. But if you were like on Pixel 5, I don't think it's actually worth upgrading. Let me actually quickly check the specs of Pixel 5 just so I'm fully aware of what I'm talking about. So we have Pixel 5. Pixel 5 is the default one. There's also Pixel 5a and 5a 5G. Now, one thing that I'll add, this phone does have 5G by default. There is no other option compared to something like Pixel 5. Now, the reason why I'm also comparing Pixel 5 instead of like the default 6 is because the 6 one is basically a premium version of this. So this is the cheaper version of the 6, kind of like a Lite. So probably better comparison is to the previous Pixels 5. And in terms of that, we have on Pixel 5, we have a 12 megapixel wide sensor, so basically the same thing that we have here, but it's a 16 megapixel ultra wide. That's one of the difference, and it's rocking a Snapdragon 765, which is a 5G chipset, and it's not using the Tensor chip, which these Pixels use, the new ones. So all the Pixel 6 use the Tensor chipset from Google. And apart from that, there is not much of a difference, but there is one. Pixel 5 does have a OLED display with a 90 Hz refresh rate, which at this point I guess there is no point in upgrading to this one if you already have something like a Pixel 5. So this phone will not be the best upgrade. And actually I think it would be more of a downgrade, because the camera here, you get a 12 megapixel ultra wide instead of the 16, and you have a 60 hertz on this phone instead of like the 90 on Pixel 5. So this is a little bit of a downgrade, I would say. Now, to quickly go over all these specs right here, because I just went over a couple of them, we have, like I said, Google Tensor, 6 gigs of RAM, 4,410 milliamp hour battery, 128 gigabytes of storage. That's just one option, there is no other one, with UFS FS 3.1. We have an 8 megapixel selfie camera, 18 watt charging, without the charger obviously, and that's basically all the like worth mentioning specs right here. The reason why I went over them is because another contender for this phone, a competition you might say, would be the Nothing phone. Now it is much chunkier, as you can probably see. It resembles in terms of appearance more an iPhone rather than like an Android, and it does have better specs apart from maybe the processor. Like I said, I don't know how they compare, but the Nothing phone basically comes around the same price tag, but has just a couple additional things. For instance, whoops, we do have at the back a wireless charger. You can basically see the circle right here, that's the wireless charger. So you can just slap it on any kind of Qi charger and charge it up, something that the Pixel 6a does not have for some reason. And these phones basically come at the same price, while this one just feels, I would say, a little bit more premium. And in terms of like the OS right here, or the skin of Android, it's not that much different. It is really similar in terms of appearance. It's almost as stock as it can get. It has a couple of their little touches, like their font that they use all around. So you can see it in a couple places. But yeah, it's objectively, I would say this might be actually a better phone. The only difference here is probably your camera preference. Now, this will have dual 50 megapixel sensors, wide and ultra wide. So same setup as here, but this one has 12 instead of 50. And the image processing will be obviously significantly different. So that's probably going to be something that a lot of people will pick the phone based on the image processing of cameras, because megapixels I don't think will matter that much here, considering Google is really good at using what it has. But objectively I would consider this to be a better package entirely. So the screen, the body, the build of this device, the internals just seem all better compared to the Pixel. Now, one thing that I did learn thanks to Michael Fisher from, I think whatever his channel was called, I forgot, but he did have a really great point about this phone. It has a lot of features built into the OS that no other Android basically has. So it has like live translations, transcribings, and a lot of smart features that you can utilize whenever you want, and they're always there, something that you don't have on any other phones. And that might be one of the reasons that people might actually think of picking this phone up, because just that alone, for instance, if someone calls you, you don't need to even grab your phone, just say pick up, for instance, or cancel or mute, and it just does what you tell it to. It listens to your voice commands. When you're, for instance, further away from a phone to grab it, you can pick it up without even touching it, which is really nice. And it has a bunch of like features like this packed all around, which make this phone actually a really decent all-around phone in terms of the software. So at the end of the day, this is kind of like a software versus hardware battle between the two phones that are, I would say, almost the same like price point. So like I said, Nothing phone would be more like a hardware phone where the hardware inside is better, but Google wins with the software all around. But anyway, with that being said, I kind of rambled for a little bit, so if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.